Bogmore, the most secretive kingdom in all the Highlands. Very little was known about it until the forging of the Five-Hand Alliance, and still to this day, very few visitors are allowed in. Now, I think I've found the reason for this, and throughout the course of this video, I'm going to explain the evidence to you that I found, or what's making me think that, and see what you think about this, because personally, I'm sold. So leave your theories and thoughts in the comments below, hit that subscribe button, and let's get into it. Throughout this video, I will be referencing Garrick's journal, a diary from a new Valkeeper, starting from before the fracture and detailing the events leading up to and following it as he ascends the ranks of the Order of the Valkeepers. I will link the journal in the description so that you can read through it at your own leisure. I do also have a video briefly going over the events of the journal that I will link in the corner as well. My theory begins in the lead up to the Lost War, a period in Highland history that we know very little about. However, the things that we do know, I believe, have darker connotations, as you're about to see. To paraphrase chapter 6 of Highland history, and you can read the full excerpts on the Spellbreak Wiki, during this time there was an uneasy truce between the five kingdoms of the Highlands that would later become the Five-Hand Alliance. And these truces weren't much more than peace treaties and trade deals, although that was all about to change as some raiders started, well, raiding. Mainly in Bogmore, but also into the southern Highlands. And the raiders left no one to tell the truth about what happened, whether exiled or taken. No one was left to confirm the identity of the raiders. And this is especially weird because Bogmore, where a lot of the raids were happening, also had no information on this, or weren't sharing any information. Now, I believe this is where the Bogmore Conspiracy starts. I believe the raiders were the Collective, and that they weren't actually any raids happening in Bogmore, just rumours spread by the Collective. However, the raids that were happening in the southern part of the Highlands, just outside of Bogmore, I believe these were the Collective and these were actual raids. I think this was the start of their secret campaign to force the forging of the Five-Hand Alliance. And I think it's because it's so much easier to collect intel from within an organisation than it is from the outside. The raids escalated until one specific raid that Nova Brightwill mentions in their book Highland Histories. Records indicate that this happened just after a caravan of traders was slaughtered on the Summer Road, just north of Halcyon Reach. Reports of the incident show that many of the merchants were killed while others were taken or otherwise left unaccounted for. While some records are contradictory, it appears that Fieldbrand's niece was killed or taken as part of this attack. This forced Allard Fieldbrand, the warden of the Halcyon kinship at the time, to call a meeting that would lead to the forming of the Five-Hand Alliance. The alliance meant that each kingdom had its own role and shared information with one another. Except, it seems, for the Bogmore Collective and the Shadehand, who even after the alliance was formed, rarely let outsiders into the region or shared their inner workings, as very little was and is known about them. Despite this, however, I believe that the Collective gathered a lot of information on their fellow hands, the Aegis Towers, the artifacts that they hold, and potential weaknesses, as not long after this, the Lost Wars began. The Lost Wars, as the name suggests, are a period of time in the Highlands that we know very little about. In fact, all we do know comes from Garrick's journal, where he mentions it a few times. The first time he does mention it is on page 179 of Book 2. In this page, Garrick writes, "There are several mentions of the Aegis Towers. These structures were created by the Banehelm scholars to protect against the spell tides. It appears the Stormguard was normally tasked with defending these locations, but this unit was ordered to leave the tower and move south to help reinforce the Dread Curtain. The author seems to disagree with this decision and makes note of a formal complaint. There seems to be a great unease about entering the territory of the Bogmore Collective. The reports from the battles at the Dread Curtain are terrible. There are dozens of battles mentioned with numerous losses just within the single unit. One battle in particular stands out. It appears that the Dread Curtain was breached by the enemy and this unit was forced to retreat to Castle Bogmore. They assumed the enemy would regroup and pillage Mossburn, but instead they went straight north toward the Aegis Towers. Not a single civilian was harmed in Mossburn. This unit was recalled to defend the southeasternmost tower, and there is a note on preparations for that battle, but no after-action report. A few days and a couple of pages later, after some time to contemplate, Garrett comes to some conclusions about what he's read in the journal. On page 181 of Book 2, Garrick writes, "This enemy frightened the Stormguard. They speak of it almost like a plague or a sickness. I think that this is because of how drawn out the fight was and how terrible the losses. The entries from those times speak of whispers within the Stormguard of this being some sort of punishment for the Stormguard's use of magic. This specific excerpt calls it out. Last night we had a rotation of the guard from the Dread Curtain in the heart of the southern marshes. The situation certainly seems dire, but I have never seen men so distraught. They said that they would rather die in battle than live with the corruption on their essence from their magic. These whispers keep coming, and word has it that Commander Fernfall is the source. She wants us to change tactics and feels this war is unwinnable. This is insanity, and the worst time for a power struggle within the ranks of the Stormguard." It seems like the owner of this journal, sadly the first many pages have been removed so I can't tell you who they were, was very skeptical of this idea. They felt that this was a political push by Lyra Ventham, although do not use his title, and at the time Commander Aura Fernfall, who herself was also a member of the Valkeepers. These Valkeepers are mentioned by name several times, but it seems that they had much less influence at the time than the history books I've read. These notes indicate that over the course of several seasons of battle, the Bogmore Collective was put under an incredible pressure, and even with the support of the Longwatch Protectorate, it took the entire Five-Hand Alliance to end the threat. It is surprising how much effort went into obscuring details on this actual enemy. It seems deliberately vague, even in these personal notes. Now, although these 2 pages may not seem like a lot of information, I believe there is more than enough red flags and things that don't add up to use as evidence for the Bogmore Conspiracy. Firstly, the fact that the enemy was so obscure. During this time, the Five-Hand Alliance had been formed, and the Collective's role in this was both foreign and domestic information. So how could no one have known who this enemy was, especially Bogmore, where the war itself was taking place? Further to this, the only known race outside of the Highlands were the Prisma, who we had a trade relationship with, so it's hard to imagine them being the attackers either. Then there's the fact that not only were the Collective overwhelmed by this enemy, but the Stormguard were also called in to help. As Garrick stated, the Stormguard were the protectors of the Aegis Tower, so I believe it was all part of the plan to lure them away from the tower, to give the attackers, who I believe are the Bogmore Collective, a chance to break in and steal whatever artifacts or research are being held there, as once the Stormguard arrive to reinforce the Collective, they too are overwhelmed and forced to retreat to Castle Bogmore. This turned out to be the worst mistake they could have made though, as they thought the invaders would pillage Mossburn on the way through, giving them enough time to regroup and mount a defense there. However, this wasn't the case. As we know, the invaders completely passed Mossburn, instead heading straight for the Aegis Tower that the Stormguard had left unprotected. So why did the invaders completely avoid pillaging Mossburn? Because it's Bogmore territory. Why did they go straight for the Aegis Towers even though they're usually heavily defended? Because the Collective knew it would be devoid of guards. How did the enemy even know to go for the Aegis Towers? Well, that's because they had the insider knowledge from being part of the Five-Hand Alliance. The Stormguard unit that is usually guarding the tower did get a recall order, and whilst the preparations were made and documented, there was never any after-action report, and I think this is because the Stormguard never actually left Castle Bogmore, instead being chalked up as losses from the battle at the Dread Curtain. Even the few Stormguards that did return from the Dread Curtain said that they would rather die than live with the corruption on their soul from the magic. However, I don't think this is what they thought it was. I believe this was the Tox Gauntlet, as we know, Tox was a completely man-made element, so it would never have been seen before. And with all the toxic brimstones found all over Bogmore, I believe this is further proof that the Collective were behind it all, as in all the years prior to this, there was never once mention of the fact that magic corrupts the soul. The rumours are said to come from Commander Fernfall, but what if this isn't the real Aura Fernfall? What if it's just the Collective using some type of control magic to force the Alliance to usher in the Val Mandate? In fact, this is exactly what I think happened. I believe the whole war was a ruse by the Collective to raid the tower, steal the artifacts, and then once they had them all, pushed for magic to be outlawed, making the other kingdoms relinquish what magic and artifacts that they had left, not knowing the Collective had absolutely no intentions of doing the same, as we find out later in Garrick's journal, when Garrick goes to meet the Shade Hand and has magic used on him, making Bogmore the most powerful kingdom in the Highlands, and ready to start an all-out conquest for the Highlands. But then the fracture happened. Which brings us to today. With the current in-game story that we've been given, we do find out a little bit more about the Bogmore Collective. If only a little. In literally the second week of Chapter 1, we're introduced to Blackthorn, a former Collective agent who has apparently defected due to Bogmore having info on the fracture and not wanting to share it without the right leverage. To me, this sent alarm bells ringing. Why would they want to use it for leverage if all they want to do is restore the Highlands? The following week, Blackthorn says something else that I find very interesting. She says, all of you were abandoned by your kingdoms once you took up magic, yet here you are, trying to save the very homelands that branded you criminals. Tragic, ain't it? The fact she says all of you instead of all of us leads me to believe the Collective don't abandon or brand magic users as criminals, directly disobeying the Val mandate and further proving my point. It even makes me wonder if Blackthorn truly has defected or if she's just a double agent. In Chapter 2, we once again have to go back to Bogmore to steal secrets. This time, however, it's an artifact, a powerful one, thought hidden away long ago, but instead it was in the hands of the Collective. I am of course talking about the Chronolith, a device able to allow the user the ability to see events of the past. And Bogmore had this. Why? What have they seen? Where did they get it? I can't answer the first two of those questions. The last, however, I'm pretty sure they got them when they raided the Aegis Tower all those years ago. In conclusion, I believe that the Bogmore Collective have orchestrated and engineered events to position themselves as the true powerhouse of the Highlands, ready for an all-out war to conquer the land. However, before they got the chance, the fracture happened, and they've had to adjust their plans and incorporate the unforeseen events and play the newly arisen factions to still get their end goal of dominion over the Highlands. To the end, thank you so much. This video has been a long time coming, and I'm so proud of how fleshed out I've been able to make this theory. Leave your thoughts and your theories in the comments down below, whether you agree or disagree. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any more lore updates. And until next time, stay chill, stay curious, and peace out, my sloths.